Hello everyone and welcome to your asynchronous class for week 12 of the NURS 4525. We're going to focus on ecological determinants of health and environmental health inequities. This is from chapter 27, as well as we'll focus on global health. This is chapter 33. But before we get into the content, I just want to remind you of your final exam, which is going to be on April the 12th at 1900. Location as the TM Tate at York University. Duration is 120 minutes, so the 2 hours. Questions are going to be 80 multiple choice and true and false, and 1 NGS style question, which is worth 5 points. This is at the end of your last page. So in total, there's 85 points for this exam. And the focus of the exam will be mainly from midterm to final. And please note, they are going to be some specific questions that are only related to this class, such as this is hint, make, wish, dash, such, some of the content that we've done, an application of the content, especially when we worked in small group discussions or large group discussions, or the discussion forums that were on eClass as well as part of your participation. All right. So good luck on that, and I will see you on the 12th. All right, so today we're going to focus on the ecological determinants of health, explain how the social and geopolitical location contribute to the environmental factors inequities, especially focusing on Canada itself. Identify major issues of that global change. So now we're moving to global health and the UN Sustainable Development Goals and their relevance to the community nursing. Of course, I will embed the practice questions as promised right into this video. And then I have tips for the final exams at the end, which are only tips. They're not inclusive exactly 100% what's going to be in the exam, but some tips. And of course, I will provide you the tips throughout this presentation as well. All right, so you've seen this before. This is the Health Promotion Ottawa Charter. So really, this is a review. So it is a new definition noted addition to the changes to cope with the environment, our changing environment, such as, you've seen the snowstorms that we had even just this semester, past from January till now, right? Some of the kind of snowstorms, then it melts, then it's warm. So some of those changing of the environments, right? But what does the snowstorms really mean to those vulnerable populations that we have, or those individuals that are low income, right? How does it affect them? So really today, that's what we're going to focus on. What does it mean for all of us with harsh weather and global warming as well? How does that impact us and the health we provide to our communities? Okay, this is as well of a review. So the history of health promotion documents, and you can see them moving throughout. And the most current was from 2003, which is the Toronto Charter. So really, I'm just showing this to you as a review and really focusing on that health promotion aspect as we discuss the community health, specifically focusing on the topics for today, right? So ecological determinants of health. Here they're listed: oxygen, water, food, ozone, nitrogen, fertilized soil, materials, energy, and stable global climate. So all of these are necessary for sustaining life on the earth. It is, in addition to the oxygen, clean water, soil, we depend on these resources for energy, materials, and shelters as well, right? Indigenous traditional knowledge about ecosystem is closely linked to the land and plants of the communities and reflected of the diverse indigenous people around the world, not just in Canada, but really around the world. And in Canada, excuse me. So in Canada, it is recognized that children or their adult First Nation Inuit communities are particular vulnerability to the environment of health inequities, right? Indigenous communities are vulnerable due to the inadequate housing that can be exposed to their overcrowding, mold, unsafe drinking water, just to name the few. And children are more sustainable to pesticide exposure than adults, and older adults are more vulnerable to weather events such as heat waves, just to give you an aspect of that, ecological determinants of health and impact. So environmental injustice, this is the inequitable exposure of poor, minority, and disenfranchised population to toxic chemicals containing air contaminated in air, water, unsafe workplace, and other forms of population, and distributed through the population-related disease, often in violation of the human rights as well. Okay, so that's what environmental injustice is. Oops. Here we go. So environmental health inequities, these are nearly 25% of global burden of disease, is really linked to that environmental risk factors such as air, water, and pollution. Children, older adults, indigenous population are more affected, right? And I already mentioned that children are more affected to pesticides exposure, and older adults is weather events such as that heat wave or maybe snowstorms, and indigenous people are inadequate housing as well. All right, so geographic, geopolitical, and social locations, and really looking at the different geographic provided different contexts into everyday life. And this really focusing on that water supplies, which is absolutely huge, right? Because we need water to survive. Vegetation, agriculture, such as fishing, air quality, wildlife, and plant ecosystems. The geographical, geopolitical continues, so combining sequences such as exposure to lead, pesticides, mold, noise, unintentional injuries, GI infections, birth defects, cancer, disability, early mortality, malnutrition, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, chronic disease, diabetes, mental health, and depression. All right, Ottawa Charter, remember this. So really focusing on those inequities, reorienting to the health services. And it is to recognize the health and maintenance as a major social investment of challenges, and addresses the overall ecological issues of our ways of living and health public policy, and to advocate for clear political commitment to that health inequities in all aspects. And this is from WHO's as well. So talking about race, do white Canadians get better health care than people of color? What do you think? Yes or no? It's a question for discussion for sure. This is a video that I want you to watch on your own, and this is related to Canadian Worst Landlord in Toronto Housing, and this is a few years back, but it is still relevant to today's society and what's happening in Toronto. Okay, so after that video, ask yourself who is the client, or who are the clients within that video? How do we support those individuals? Focus on those disabled, chronic illness, low income families, the vulnerable population. Okay, and also think about the impact of COVID that we had. What do you think? These individuals and how they went through that aspect of it, of COVID, and for the individuals that are sick or vulnerable. Okay, just food for thought. So using Ottawa Charter in partners with the communities, it is the strategies to address some of the concerns and the concerns that you've seen in the video. So what kind of lifestyle do these individuals live and have been provided, especially related to the determinants of health, right? So helplessness can lead to poor health outcomes. They were taken advantage of. Neighborhood where the strong victims of the weak and gang may be thrive there. Remember that the determinants of health, it is. So what do you think they are here? What are the determinants of health? Okay, what resources these individuals have? Do remember that community health nurses focus on resources for the communities, for these individuals, these clients. So what is there? How do you support them? Once again, food for thought. Okay, what's the community health nurse's role in addressing health disparities? It really is to empower social justice and caring. CHN practice the working in the environments. There are different programs such as visiting programs and public health promotions as well, defining who the clients are. They could be a population, communities, or individuals within. All right, so that's about it about that, the CHN roles to address health disparities. How about this question? I will leave this question up for a minute for you to read through, and then I'll provide you the answer. Okay, so hopefully you chose B. We just discussed it. So ecological determinants of health. All right, so let's move on to global health. So what is global health? It is a placed priority on improving health and advancing equity for all people around the world. Globalization has also increased the wide disparities in access to social resources and opportunities that could be affordable to all. Global health is an area of study, research, and practice that places a priority of improving health and achieving equity to all people, and areas of health that understand and address the effect of globalization of health and public health, international health and global health. Okay, so public health, international health, and global health. Climate changes, so this is the rise in greenhouse gases, also the melting of the permafrost where in First Nation communities are built on, right? So how does that climate change impact them? And pollution, right? So increase of CO2 emission to major driven the global warming, fresh water, soil, metal, chemicals. Majority of the pollution related are deaths among the children and poor. And next one is social political trends. So that food and housing insecurities, 2/3 of global population is malnutrition due to food shortage and obesity from the lifestyle that individuals live, air pollution, COPD, lung cancer. And once again, we have to focus on we have to mention indigenous community and their further displacement due to that climate change, colonial legacy, and loss of culture and identity and land. All right, here is another question. I'll leave it for you to read. Okay, so hopefully you chose C, global health. All right, next is environmental frameworks, so indigenous perspectives that Western scientific knowledge alone not sufficient to lead the way. Indigenous people have their relationship, which are deeper respect to their land, to where the traditions are important to them as individuals, as a community, and intersectional ecological feminist approaches, which is reject the value used to establish opposition and exclusiveness. Okay. So planetary health approaches. This is considered impact on the human activities and atmosphere, oceans, land, and consequences to human health. Human activities including overpopulation, environmental damage, carbon footprint, just to name a few. And the health generation required that we engage in planetary health and preserve the environment. So really looking at the planet and the preservation of what we have to contain and sustain life. So community health nursing, right? So how do we approach this? And of course, we look at the level of prevention, and we have them listed here. I'll just name a few. Do know these. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There are several questions with regards to this, okay? So primordial would be local, national, global policies aim to protect the environment. So that One Health. Primary would be an example, immunization, consulting about reducing exposure and supporting policies as well. Secondary would be early detection, so that's screening of the environment related to disease and limiting disabilities. And tertiary would be involved in recovery and rehabilitation of the environment related disease and conditions after disease has developed, okay? And a pollution health co-benefit approaches, including advocating with the client's community on issues such as pesticide-free lawns and gardens, right? So these levels of prevention specifically focus on that environmental health, and the 4 levels are listed here. All right, this is right from your book. So figure 27.1, have a look at that to understand what the pollution and the impact of it is on communities and individuals and populations. Here's an example of global trends, causes of death. You can see heart attacks is the highest, then stroke, chronic obstructive, so COPD, is next here, lower respiratory infections, and TB on the bottom. All right, moving on to maternal, newborn, and child health. So we discussed lots of this topic last week. But let's look at it, globally as well. So women and children living in South Asia and suburbs of Africa continue to face the highest rate of maternal, newborn, and child death. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Despite of a global declining, the maternal mortality rate is alarming that nearly 830 women die every day from complications related to pregnancy and childbirth, right? So that's a lot, 830 women a day. Here is a question. Okay, so I did just mention the health of women and children. So the answer is A. So this diagram shows the global distribution of death among children, the actual children. So you can see, how they're divided. So the death was considered from 0 to 27 days, and preterm birth, 16%, for example, right? And here, decima children, 1 to 59 months, which is accounted for 54%. And here are the list of causes of their death. And you can see that pneumonia is 13, which is really high. All right, next one is the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So this is, the network has established 12 groups that are solution-oriented rather than research-oriented. So these are focusing on actual solution. The goal is to stimulate the government, the UN, and public towards discovery of practices solution related to challenges of sustaining that development. So how do you, implement different processes that are sustainable to the population? right? So they have developed 17 Sustainable Development Goals. No, you do not need to know them in detail. Just know that they are working as one of their goals is to provide that sustainable development. And community health nurses are really in a unique position to embrace and recommend and develop health-related metrics to consider for that sustainable global goals and initiative calls to action as well. Right, so we get involved in the sustainability. All right, human rights, social justice, and social determinants of health. So global health diplomacy is one way to challenging oppressive power relation in hopes to achieving the social justice. There's a strong evidence indicating that the most of the global burden of disease and more specifically health inequities are caused by the social determinants of health. And CHN needs to be aware of those power and relation and give voice for those vulnerable populations, right? It could be communities, individuals within the populations, and within the context of that global health as well. All right, here is another question. So what is Debbie working on and teaching? She is teaching D, Global Citizenship. And here is one more question. What is true about globalization? And it is D, that globalization has an increased disparities in health around the world, which I've emphasized. All right. So CHN and the global citizenship, what does that look like? So looking at the past of dominant emphasis of individual care and really commonly disconnect from the social, ecological, political, cultural contexts, engaging in critical and reflective practice with social, historical, and political issues as well, and develop their capacity in identifying tension between personal, professional interests and global interests. So looking at that global health once again, it works from the perspective of people's experience of their health and illness and their culture wherever you are around the world, wherever the population you are, the CHN is studying. So geopolitical, geographic, and cultural aspects are focused on when CHN works with individuals and communities. All right. So once again, that is all. And here's a quick reminder again that your final exam is April 12th at 1900. Here are the tips that you need to focus on for the exam. These are absolutely not inclusive of everything that's going to be on the exam. These are just tips, and I also gave you a tip before what kind of the questions that I have created and designed just for you guys, just for the specific section. All right, and that is all. Thank you so much. Thank you for a wonderful semester. Thank you for your time, your participation, and the engagement in the class. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing all of you on April the 12th. Thank you.